Welcome to the Zizzy Show and happy Pride Month, everybody. As you can see, I am here all alone. Izzy is not in the video because the next two episodes are actually kind of special for us. We are both going to be sharing our coming out stories, which neither of us have done up to this point. So the most important thing you need to know about how I grew up is that I grew up ridiculously religious. I have 5 siblings. And other than my oldest brother, Edward, who is named after my grandpa, we all have a biblical name. There is Eli, there is Ezekiel, me, there is Ezra, there's Ephraim, and there's Esther. If you haven't caught on yet, we are all E names. And all the boys have the same middle name, Raymond. It's very original. So that's by far the most important thing you need to remember about how I grew up. My dad was a pastor literally my entire life, along with my mom. And we grew up in, I say the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, but we grew up in Stevens Point, / Wapaka area, which, I mean, there was like 30 to 35,000 people in Stevens Point. So, I mean, it's like, it was up there, but it's like not the middle of nowhere. But like, we grew up with no shoes on, running in the woods, hunting, fishing, all that and the others. Like, that's how we grew up. I also grew up homeschooled. I was homeschooled almost my entire schooling life. I went to a Lutheran school for half of my 4th grade. I went to a public school for my 5th grade, and then I did half a year of as a sophomore in high school. Other than that, I graduated a homeschooler. All of my friends were homeschoolers, Christians. We went to Bible camp every single summer, every single winter. Every summer, my family would do 3 or 4 special needs camps where we would go and volunteer for a week. That was our life. We were fundraising for missionaries. We went to church every Sunday, prayer groups every Saturday night. We went to every youth, all the youth Wednesday night services, BGMC, Awanas, all of it. But we were also the family that didn't get tied down to a church long enough, because we were like, we had our eyes open, right? We knew the truth of the Bible, and we knew it better than everybody else. That's how we grew up. So a lot of times we ended up having like a home church, and now that I look back on it, it was very cultish. I mean, to be fair, a lot of churches are in their own way very cultish, but as I look back on my life as like a Christian, it was very cultish. So the idea of being gay or being attracted to men was obviously an absolute no. I remember when I was 11. So I was 11 years old, and I remember we were getting ready for church, and I was with my brothers, and we were like kind of on the computer, and I was like, it'd be funny to look up fat guys on the internet. And we just typed in fat guys on the internet, and we just started laughing. But like, I knew, I was like, I don't know what I feel about them, but there's like some sort of like positive attraction towards these men. And so like, that was like my first like eye opener of like, okay, I'm attracted to men. But I remember when I was 13 and like 14 years old, that was the first time that I had like looked at porn for the first time. And it was not heterosexual porn, I'll tell you that. Cause gross. Yeah, it was definitely gay porn. And so I remember I had watched, I don't know, it was probably a couple months where I was watching porn, because what teenager doesn't watch porn, honestly? And I remember coming outside, my parents were sitting on the porch in our house, and I was like, Mom and Dad, I need to tell you something. I was watching porn, and I'm sorry, I know I shouldn't have done it. And my dad, being like the smart one in the family, he asked me, he was like, well, what kind of porn were you watching? Like, what did you type into the search bar? Like, God, why do you care that much? Like, it was porn. And I told him what I had looked up. And like I said, this was like 13 or 14 years old. And obviously they were a little shocked, but I think at that point it was something that they didn't really want to recognize because I was 13 or 14 years old. Like, oh, it was probably just a thing, a phase, and it's going to pass. Even though like watching porn in general was absolute no, sin, repent, pray, read the Bible every day. Like, those are the steps to recover from such an addiction. But like at that point, I knew I'm attracted to men. I'm not attracted to women. But as a good Christian, I did my best to stuff it down. I did my best to, pray, ask God for deliverance. And, if you have any experience with the church, you know exactly what I mean. So now we're turning 16, 17 years old, and it's still there. It hasn't gone away. And at this point, I'm just afraid to tell anybody because, like, what are my Christian pastor parents going to say when I tell them I'm gay? And at the same time, I'm trying my best to live my best life, to live for Jesus, and to do all the things that the Bible has taught me to do. So 16, 17 years old, I'm still struggling with it. I graduate high school, and our family is very non-traditional in terms of like life paths. We were never encouraged to go to college or do any sort of university. It was like a life for Jesus. Like that's what we were supposed to do. My older brother, Eli, he ended up going to India out of high school, and he's lived in the United States for maybe a year since he's graduated high school, and he's a couple years older than me. So he's been out of the state for like 9 years. And so watching his example, I'm like, okay, well, I want to do that. And I like the idea of getting out of my family's house and living like my own life, but being in a safe environment because it was a missionary trip, right? So I signed up to do a year for God with YWAM, which was Youth with a Mission. Very evangelical, like Pentecostal, like hands raised, speaking in tongues. Like that was the kind of Christianity I grew up in. So I signed up for a year for God, and I was supposed to be in Uganda for a whole year. I made it 7 months before my mom came over and told me I needed to come home. She literally came all the way to Africa, saw that there was a couple issues in the church, and said, you need to come home. It's not safe to be here, which I regret coming back. That's a whole nother story. That was my solution to try to overcome my sexual tendencies that were sinful according to the Bible, was to go overseas and serve God and be around Christians 24/7. And I thought like that's going to help me, because all these other prayers and baptisms and deliverance and sharing with small groups, this is my struggle, like they weren't working. So I came back from Africa. I'm like 18, almost 19 years old, and I moved back in with my family, and like I had it in terms of like, okay, obviously God, this is how you made me, because it's not like I was just looking through a magazine. I was like, oh yeah, look at that guy, I like him. Like, it was obviously something that was in me from the beginning. Now I look back on it, like I was the one out of the 5 boys, I was the one that was always wearing my mom's shoes. I was the one that was always putting my mom's clothes on. I was the one with the collection of Barbie horses. I was the one taking horseback riding lessons. But I was also like the super sporty boy. Like now looking back on it, like I've always been more in tune with a little bit more of my feminine side compared to the rest of my brothers. And when I say feminine side, not meaning that has equated me to being gay, but like I was the oddball out. You know what I'm saying? And so when I came back from Africa, I was, I'm not gonna lie, I became a hoe. I was a straight up I was a hoe. I was doing it all behind everybody's back. Sneaking out at night. Yo, Grinder wasn't a thing then. It was like Bigger City, and it was like Chaseable and Grammar. Like that. Those were the apps at that point. So that happened for a couple years, and when I got to Arizona, it kept going. I finally just told my parents. I'm like, hey, this is what I've been doing. I feel terrible because at this point I'm still trying to live for God. You know, I was still trying to live my life for Jesus and to be the best Christian I could and to be the best son and brother I could. And I was just like, well, I cannot keep living this life of sin. I need to repent. I need to do something different. And so, because like I said, it was all hookups. And for me, the hookups were super unfulfilling just because I just felt like I was giving a part of myself away. At the same time, I was battling my inner self on what I, at that point, knew was right and what I knew was wrong. My mind's very different now. But like, there was a struggle, like there was a battle. And I remember telling my parents that, hey, this is what I've been doing. And I also came down with an STD because I was super naive. I was like, well, if you top, you're not gonna get an STD. That's what I read. Oh, that's funny. So I ended up telling my parents like, hey, I'm sick and I need to do something different. And I'm sorry I lied to you. Most traumatizing time of my life. I remember telling my parents, and at that time I had 3 brothers. Four of us boys were staying in this, like, we all had the same room and like 2 bunk beds each. And I remember after I told them, they made me use my own bathroom. They made me sleep on the floor in the office, and I couldn't be around my brothers for 3 days because they thought I was contagious. Definitely the most traumatizing time of my life. It made me feel very like not human. And like there's part of me that understands like why they did that, because they were scared. But like, I'm your son. Like, why are you treating me like some random bum that just came off the street, you know? Like I'm gonna sleep with my brothers or something. So then from that point on, it was like a good probably 2.5 years where I was just like, okay, I gotta give my whole life back to the Lord. I need to do everything right. I would read my Bible every day, pray, keep a journal, lead youth group, every Christian thing I could think of. I was like doing it, and at the same time, my mom and my dad are trying to keep me accountable because they feel responsible for me. All the while, me fully knowing it hasn't gone away. I fully know that I still am attracted to men. And so all the while I knew that I was not attracted to women. I was attracted to men. But like at that time, I still did not understand what was right and what was wrong. I physically didn't have the knowledge of what was outside of Christianity. Like my brain and my mind was so accustomed to everything my parents and the church had ever told me. Like there was actually no physical idea of what life could be like or life was outside of Christianity, other than everybody is a sinner, everybody's going to hell if you don't have Jesus. Like that's all I knew. And I remember sometimes I would message like guys on these sites, and I would say like, oh no, I'm not out, and I'm still a Christian or whatever, you know. I would say things like that, and these guys would tell me like, you know, the Bible never said that being gay was wrong, and da 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 da. And I would just read these texts and be like, you guys are ridiculous. Yes, it does. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, so when I'm saying like my mind was accustomed to everything Christianity, like my whole atmosphere was Christianity. And it lasted about 2 years. This good Christian boy Zeke lasted about 2 years. Okay. My parents decided that they were going to move to Taiwan. Okay. And at this point, I was working at the post office. I had been there for a couple years. I was ready to move out. I was ready to have my own place. I was getting charged $500 for rent while sharing a room with my little sister. Because they wanted to give my room that I was renting to the dogs that they wanted to breed. So I was like, no, I'm out of here. So they went to Taiwan. I said, nope, bye. I'm getting my own apartment. I got my first apartment, and that's when I got out of the atmosphere of Christianity and my parents' influence. I was like, okay, now I can experience life for myself without anybody telling me, you need to do this, you need to do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. So I did. I stopped doing a bunch of hookups and stuff when I met. Technically, he wasn't my first boyfriend. Okay. Technically, we were in a relationship, but I wasn't out yet. So we never said we were boyfriends. His name was Zach, and I was with him for about a year. And he was he was the first person like to take my hand and to show me like, hey, being gay is not what you've been taught it was. Like, you're no different than anybody else. The only thing is that you have attraction for men and you love like the relationship aspect of being with a man and not a woman. Like, there's no difference. So I was with him for about a year, and the relationship aspect didn't work out with him. So we ended up being friends. And at that point, we were literally just best friends. But he was the one that really, he took my hand and he helped guide me through everything that was happening with my family, because I'm a very transparent person. And so when these things were happening, I was still struggling too. And I ended up telling my dad, I'm like, hey dad, I'm seeing this guy and I know that it's wrong, but I was basically telling him like, I'm not going to deny that I'm attracted to men anymore. And my dad asked me, because he was still here before we moved to Taiwan, but my mom was there. He's like, do you think we need to tell mom? And I'm like, no, I don't think you need to. She's already stressed out over there, right? Well, he told her anyways. And guys, when I tell you, my mom told the entire church that I was sleeping with a man. Well, not sleeping with a man. She was telling people I was having sex with men and that I'm sinning. And guys, the number of paragraph texts I was getting from every other believer in our church was so overwhelming. Like, it was so overwhelming. And I shut down. I shut down because I didn't know what to do. I also didn't really have the knowledge of like fighting back on why I thought it was okay to be gay. And that honestly has taken years to like learn what I actually believe and not what I was forced to believe. So once my mom did that, I was like, okay, peace, I'm out of here. I can't do this church drama. Like, nobody's texting me asking me like, hey Zeke, how are you doing since your parents, since you moved out, and I heard this is happening, like, how are you doing? It's like, there was no sort of relationship with people. It was just like, you're going to hell, this is happening, you need to repent. Now fast forward like a year and a half. My mom has told everybody what she wants to tell them. At this point, people think I'm still just struggling with homosexuality, right? I hadn't told them like, hey, I'm gay, anything like that. And I remember the first person I ever told, the first person I ever came out to, it was my friend Stella. We were driving up north out of Phoenix, and as we were driving north, I just looked at her and we were just talking. I don't even know what we were talking about. And I was just like, Stella, I'm gay. And she looks at me and she's like, Zeke, I know. I'm like, how do you know? She's like, I'm pretty sure a lot of people know. We're just all waiting for you to come out. I'm like, how do you even know I'm gay? She's like, Zeke, you bake cookies every Monday and bring them to work. Like, you are not straight. I was like, well, if everybody's reading me like that, what am I doing wrong? And yes, she was the first person I ever told. And then at that point, a few months later, I was in a relationship with my ex. I remember making a post during Christmas on Facebook, and my ex and I were like holding each other in our Christmas pajamas. And we're like, I think I made like a sappy post of like, I love you, da 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 da. And that was like the first time I like publicly said, hey guys, I'm in a relationship with a guy. And the world blew up, bro. Everything went crazy. And I just remember the whole church just came back out of nowhere. New numbers, people I blocked had new numbers now. I was getting calls from my parents, and but when I did that, I felt so free. I was like, I don't have to hide anymore. I don't know why I kept trying to lie to myself that I was living a good life, struggling year after year, month after month, praying week after week, God, deliver me, da 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 da. When in reality, there was nothing to deliver me from. Like, he wanted my heart to be light, which was just me accepting myself and who he made me to be. I am naturally a very excited, loving person. I got some serious sass, don't get me wrong, but I was the brother that remembered every birthday. I was the brother and the son that took care of the younger siblings. That was my heart. I've always had a very big giving heart. So those things didn't change, but I had this expectation that I needed to live a certain way when whoever's up there, I don't know if it's God, I don't know who it is, but whoever's up there, whoever created me was just like, yo, that's the way I made you, just live in it. And the minute I did that, I have blossomed. I've also gained weight because when I have to show pictures, I'll show some pictures. When I was struggling and not doing well, fighting between religion and what's right, what's wrong, I would just get skinny because I was so depressed, and living by myself, I was just depressed. But the minute I came out and I was like, okay, this is me, I started gaining weight because I was eating. But the joy came back to my face. There was more fullness, and I was so much happier. But in terms of my family, I have no relationship with my family. There's a portion of my extended family that love me, my auntie Nina, my cousin Taylor, my auntie Becky, my cousin Erica, there's a select few that just absolutely love me. But in my immediate family, there's very few. I have my brother Ezra, which he's my best friend. We talk every other day. I go to visit him. I could not live life without him. And then there's my older brother Edward and his wife, and they're also very supporting of me and their three kids, my nieces and nephews. But as for my mom and my dad, and the other three siblings that a couple of them are too young to be able to, they're not allowed to talk to me. But I haven't seen or talked to my parents in almost 3 years now. And at first, guys, it was really hard. At first, I would cry constantly I would cry constantly on holidays. I mean, it would just hurt because we grew up as a family. We do all the holidays, all birthdays together. And so now having parents that have completely disowned me and want nothing to do with me, I was like, it takes time to make your own family and to move on past your genetic family. It takes a while to get past the hurt from old family members. I'm not even past it all. Some holidays are better than others. Christmas and Thanksgiving are usually the tougher ones. My birthday is by far the toughest. It's the toughest holiday. I am 1,000 times better than I was a year ago, 1,000 times better than I was the year before that. It's the longer I go accepting who I am and living free, the happier I get. And I just wanted to say, you only have one life. Live it for the people you love and for you. not for what other people's opinions are. And I think a lot of times we get trapped in that because society builds all this peer pressure and all these expectations for us, and we feel like, oh, if we don't do those, if we don't fill those, we're not going to fit in. But that's simply, it's not true, and it's scary to move on past that. And for the people that have family members that just can't stand you, don't want to be around you, I'm sorry. I know how much it hurts, and I know how many tears you have cried. Like, I know it hurts. But just remember that your chosen family, the ones you choose to be around you, are truly the people that matter. If you're not around people that love you, then what's the point? There's literally no point. We can try years on years to try to get our families to love us and be around us, but if they don't want to, why are we wasting our time? You know, like, I will always have the smallest crack. I'm gonna say the smallest crack in the door for my parents. As much as I want to shut the door completely forever, there will always be a crack in case they change, because I changed. So who am I to say my parents can't change? But not at the expense of my happiness and who I am. So if they can finally come to terms with who I am and treat me with respect, then there's hope for that, you know? But like, you live your life, you go out there and love the people you love, be around the people you want to be around, and truly live a happy life. So guys, this is my coming out story. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for Izzy's.